Depression Vacation with Hal and Shannon. Technically, the first episode of Depression Vacation because we didn't know we were Depression Vacation last week.
We were in our hearts, though.
Yeah, it was fun. We talked about things. It was like a month ago at this point.
But that's okay because, eventually we'll get like a few episodes and then, we'll have a little buffer.
Yeah, we have official stickers now, too, which if you see Shannon would be happy to provide you with a sticker of our nice little art. There's a crab, there's some sand, there's some water. It makes you just want to take a vacation from your problems.
That's right, and that's what this is for.
Yeah. So before we start talking about this, I think Shannon had a story that she was trying to tell me, and I was like, wait, we should put this on the podcast in case it's interesting. So.
It's kind of interesting. So anyway, I've been living in this apartment for like 8 years, right? And basically, at this point, my landlord and I have come to the understanding that I almost never bother him about things, and I generally just kind of try to fix things myself, because he doesn't live super close by, and I'm pretty handy, so
you're pretty handsy with your landlord.
With the landlord. And it just makes more sense for me to just fix it, especially because my rent is so low. At this point, I'm basically living there for way less than what I should be. So
that's the sweet spot right now.
Yeah. So I don't mind generally just dealing.
Yeah, I was looking up actually what my old apartment would have been recently. And during the pandemic, I was paying $700 a month for it, and it skyrocketed to $1,100. Oof. So it puts my mortgage in perspective. But I was reading something about how rent prices and housing prices have skyrocketed. So
oh yeah, absolutely. I saw that when I was working in banking. It's insane. So anyway, last night I'm playing video games, and I hear this disturbing sound from my toilet, and I'm like, oh shit, the lizard people are rising.
Alex Jones was right.
And I was like, but I'm in my underwear and a t-shirt. I'm not ready for the apocalypse by any means. So I didn't really think about it. And I was like, weird sounds happen in this apartment sometimes. And that's just the nature of living here. So I didn't think of anything of it. But then I went to go to bed and I went to use the toilet, and then I went to flush and it didn't work. And I was like, that's no good. So I don't know a whole lot about toilets. So I opened up the tank and I pulled up the chain because my little thingy, what's it called? The handle? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the flusher.
You use the flusher?
Yeah, the flusher handle. Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes you have to flush it with feeling and, gently but firmly. And my brother came over a couple months ago and he was like, I don't want to be that guy, but your toilet's not flushing. I'm like, that's not a that guy kind of thing. That's just terrible house things. So I pulled up the chain because sometimes it doesn't work with the handle, and it didn't work. And I noticed there was no water in the tank or the bowl. So I'm like, okay, no water in the tank or the bowl. That's bad. So I poured water in there and still nothing. So I texted my landlord today and I was like, hey, I've exhausted all of my toilet knowledge at this point. SOS, save our Shannon, please. He was like, I'm in Pittsburgh today. And I'm like, shit, that's cool. So when I get home, I'm going to have to mess with the toilet some more. But so I haven't had a toilet since last night. And so I have so far today peed in a Sheetz and the Olympic skating rink where I have Zumba.
Yeah, all you need to do is find a Wawa to pee in, and then you complete the
trifecta.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been my morning, and in general, so Zumba was not as fun as I would have hoped with the whole toilet situation.
Yeah, that's so 2 apartments ago, actually, I lived in a place that had a similar toilet situation where it just wouldn't flush or do anything. And my landlords, who are very thrifty, just put a brick in there and weighted it down. And that kind of worked, but it also kept the water running, but also I wasn't paying for water. So eventually, after several attempts of hey, this brick was a good idea, but it was more of a Band-Aid. Can we fix this permanently? And not getting any responses. I was just like, I'm not paying for it.
One time, the light in my kitchen, the one that's right above the sink, blew. And I have fluorescent lighting and a drop ceiling in my garage of an apartment. And it literally was a garage. They remodeled it into an apartment. So it's nice because I don't share walls with anybody. It's like a standalone structure. but this fluorescent light blew, and I'm not entirely familiar with changing out fluorescent lighting. So I told the landlord about it, and he was like, okay, I'll be around. And then he forgot about it. And so I was using like a lamp in my kitchen, just like 19th century, holding it over the pots and pans while I'm trying to cook. And then he finally was like, did we ever fix that light in your kitchen? This was like 6 months later. And I was like, no.
Yeah. I generally, like, having individual landlords has been better for me to get things fixed.
Oh, yeah.
Because the last one, I had a property management group that was awful at all this stuff, and also like tried to completely take away all of my security deposit, despite the fact that I like steam cleaned the rugs and everything when I left.
Shit, dude, I'm not getting my security deposit back.
Yeah,
I have 4 cats.
Well, this was an like, because my girlfriend at the time, when I was mentioning this to her, she was like, have you ever gotten your security deposit back? Like, every time I've given a security deposit, I've never gotten it back. And I'm like, yeah, like the last apartment, I got it back in full because I took care of the apartment. When I lived in California, I got a partial one back, usually like 70 or 80%, because like we took good care of the place. Like, I take care of my spaces, but she warned me. She's like, yeah, it's a property management group, you're not getting that money back. And she was right.
Yeah.
Like, the funny and insidious thing was, like, the security deposit was $700, and they sent me a bill for $701. It was just like adding an insult to injury. It's like, not only are we taking your security deposit, but you have to pay us $1 more.
That's hilarious.
Which I did not fucking do. And they never chased me for the $1. So
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was going to Penn State, I got a parking ticket. And I don't remember exactly why I got the parking ticket. Oh, I remember. Okay, so it was the parking permit was upside down. Mm-hmm. I had put it like backwards in the car, even though both sides had the same information on it. Mm-hmm. And so I had put it up backwards because it was like something you put around your rear view mirror. So
that's some bullshit. Like, yeah, you got a ticket for that.
I got a $5 ticket for it, and I was like, absolutely not. So I just didn't do anything about it. And then I got a letter like at the end of the school year that was like, hey, you owed us $5, but we're not going to worry about it.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like, oh, we compounded interest and now you owe us $527.
No. I had kind of gained a reputation at that campus for kind of being a little shit and not really doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So they were just like, we just want her out of here at this point, and we're just not going to hold her back for $5.
See, these things always terrify me because so I have a friend who I've worked with in a bunch of different places, and he told me like a few years ago his ex-girlfriend got a ticket in Harrisburg, and they lived in Lancaster at the time when this was going on. And she just never paid it. She's just like, well, screw this. Like, it was over some bullshit thing too that like very similar to your like tag being backwards. And he said at like 1:30 in the morning, they got like a sharp knock on their door like 5 months later, and a constable, he referred to them as rent-a-cops, because that's kind of what they are.
Yeah.
Like banged in their door and like took her in a van full of like 5 other people who also owed money for parking tickets to Harrisburg, where she was like, she had to spend the night in jail and then pay like $270 for one $30 parking ticket the next day. Let me tell you, like, after 2 years of living in Midtown Harrisburg, they are very, very ticket happy. I probably paid over 2 years, like, probably about $1,000, honestly, in parking tickets. And this was even with a permit, and it was just like, basically any opportunity to give a ticket, they would give it to you, which is probably why the city of Harrisburg has finally paid off its debts. But,
oh, right? Yeah.
But yeah, that always scared me, like the idea of a constable knocking on my door and being like, get in here.
Yeah. I'm going to take a moment for some ASMR and pull my lunch out of this bag here.
Lunch away. Yeah, so I guess
I just didn't want to make all that noise in the microphone because I've been holding the button for when I drink my coffee, but there's like, I need both hands. Where are my croutons?
Oh no, you didn't check your order from Panera Bread. Shout out to Panera Bread for not giving croutons. Your face looks so disappointed right now.
I'm disappointed, and listen, I've had a rough week.
Yeah.
So one of my nightmares came to life last week. Let me tell you. So I've been taking classes to get my certificate in financial planning. Mm-hmm. I literally just started doing this, and the class started 2 weeks ago. I get 1 week into the class, and I get a message from my financial advisor, or not my financial advisor, my academic advisor, and she's like, hey, so we're new to this program. It's brand new to the college, and we put you in a class that you don't have the prerequisites for, so we're dropping you from the class. And so I thought that she had meant the class that I was taking, the one class that I was taking for a week. And I was like, oh, okay, well, no big deal. I'll just pick up again in October. And I didn't think about it. And then the second week goes by, and I keep getting notifications on grades. And I'm like, I'm dropped from this class. I don't understand.
No.
And I emailed my academic advisor, and she was like, no, you're dropped from 306, not 307. And I was like, you're fucking kidding me. So I emailed the professor, and I was like, hey, this is what happened. What can we do? And he was like, I don't take late work. And I was like, but this was an honest mistake. And he was like, I have to be fair to the rest of the class. I'm like, yeah, but the rest of the class is not A+ dumb like me. So can we do anything? He was like, no, but if you pick up from here, you should be fine. And I was like, listen,
Whoa.
I do not think that your version of fine and my version of fine are the same thing, because I feel like your version of fine is me passing the class, but you do not know how I am as a person. And that's not the grade that I get in this class is not going to be acceptable to me.
Yeah.
So I have spent this last week scrambling, trying to get this week's work done, and then going back to the material in week 2 that I missed.
So they're not going to let you just drop the class at this point, like they had said they were going to do, and you can't pick it up in October?
It's a different class that they dropped me from. It's one of the ones that I'm taking in October. And I could drop the class, but like at this point, I don't want to, like, I've already put in work to this class. I already bought the textbook, and I'm just...
Which is like $500 right there.
Yeah. So I've had a rough week.
Well, hopefully this gets better. But one thing, before we get into the meat of the podcast, one thing I did want to talk about was like the Vidjam screening, because you were our fantastic host for it. You kept the audience entertained when Sam's laptop glitched, and I had to run to my car and get my laptop. Like, that was definitely an oh shit moment for me, because like nothing that he was doing was working. And the audience was getting pretty restless at that point too. So thank you for being an awesome host, and the whole event was pretty good. Like, I thought everybody's movie there are occasionally movies that 48-hour film festivals get submitted to, because I've been this movie as well, where just because it's such a truncated time frame, it just doesn't work, and it's just not a good movie. Like, I have at least 2 Vidjams I've done where I just haven't posted them anywhere because I'm not proud of them. For exactly those reasons. Just like something didn't work, and 48 hours was not enough time to fix it. So I was really pleasantly surprised that like all 7 movies were really awesome in that bunch.
I felt that they were all on par in terms of like how well put together they were. I felt everybody was on equal playing field with like the editing, the sound quality, everything like that. I really felt that everybody did bring it. Shout out to Lily Compton though. Like,
oh yeah,
Agni was... I mean, I was blown away. Honestly, one of the best short films I've ever seen. And it was just so powerful, even though, like, it was simple. And but there was a lot of creative visuals that I really enjoyed in that movie.
A funny side note to that. So Lily and I text somewhat often, just because, like, she's become, like... She knows all the answers to her things at this point, but like she would always text me if like she had just a little bit of a question here or there about Adobe or something like that, or specifically like Vidjam submission times, since I'm kind of the liaison for that. But I was texting with her just like casually on Monday and she was asking how Vidjam went. Nobody told her that she won all those awards, because she was like halfway into this conversation, like a half hour in, she was like, oh yeah, so who won what? And I'm like, did nobody tell you? Agni won Best Directing, Best Acting, Best Story, Best Judge's Choice, Best Art Direction. Like, it won
all but 3 awards.
Yeah, the other 3 went to Juan, who I want to give a shout out to as well, because Juan, what is it? Right is Right was his short, which won Audience Choice, Filmmaker's Choice, and Best New Filmmaker. And actually, one of the judges, Chris Rupert, is staying in my house this week because he's shooting his feature film Transient in Harrisburg. And we were just chatting about the Vidjam winners before, and he said he really loved Juan's particularly because he thought that the blind cop character in the very beginning was really, really funny.
Yeah.
But we had a good conversation about pretty much all of the movies and like what they did right, what some of them may have done wrong a little bit, but they're all kind of learning processes. Like, that's kind of how I treat every Vidjam, is like, if you learn something, things are pretty good, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I, shoot, what was I thinking of? Never mind. There is no spoon in this bag.
Oh, no.
So I guess I'm drinking this soup.
I mean, I prefer my food in forms that I can drink. I got a sheet salad yesterday for lunch, and they also didn't give me a fork, which really made me angry. But it's like a paste, too. You can't really drink that.
I'm going to do my damnedest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, here at Depression Vacation, we like to drink soup while we're talking about our things.
Well, here's the thing. I really haven't had anything to eat today. I had a protein bar before my workout, and then I worked out, and then I did yard work, and so I'm starving. So.
Yeah. Well, I haven't eaten anything today, and this is like, they say this is a huge ADHD thing, which I don't want to self-diagnose myself, but like a lot of the things are things I've had problems with pretty much my whole life. And one of the ADHD things they say is like you forget to eat during the day, and then when you finally settle down and have time, that's when you overeat, which is a common symptom for me at that point. So
yep, that's one of the ones that got me.
Yeah. So, and I try to like keep protein bars and things around just to have a snack or something like that, but just like this morning did not have time or anything like that. But going back to Vidjam real quick, just wanted to like also mention Vidjam of Horror starts in 9 days too. Yeah, I'm psyched. I'm going to have a smaller team this time, I think. Like, obviously, you and I have become Vidjam buddies, so you're always, like, welcome to join as well. But some of the best ones I've done, were the stripped-down ones. Like, one of my favorite ones I did 3 years ago with, Suji Cruz, Jasmine Wright, and Gary Limoges. It was just the 4 of us for that entire shoot, and I was shooting everything. And it just worked really well. It was very intimate. I thought it was one of the only actual scary ones I've done. And those are the kind of teams I like to work with a lot of these things. Like, big groups can be fun, but sometimes there's too many cooks in the kitchen for some of them. So
yeah, I agree. I'm excited because this Vidjam, I'm gonna take the reins on one of my own. Woo! So I'm excited. I know how you're gonna be helping me out a little bit. I've volunteered you.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll see. But yeah, most of like the writing and like the creative direction, I'm going to take the lead on one and see how it goes. I wanted to go for something actually scary. So I'm going to really challenge myself, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, a couple of people are doing that this time. I heard through the grapevine that Ashley Madavi is going to be directing her first Vidjam as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it should be a good time. And, you get 2 weeks to do it. So although they always end up being 48-hour mad dashes for me, just because, like, another bad part of my personality is I tend to be a people pleaser. So, like, as you're organizing people for a 2-week shoot, it's like, oh, all 6 of us can shoot on this day except for one person who can't. Okay, what can we do, guys? 2 days pass. Nobody talks in the group chat. And suddenly, after 2 weeks of this, you're like, okay, we have to shoot something tonight to have any chance of making this in on time.
Yeah. Well, I my kind of approach to this one is going to be, since it's basically a 2-week one, I think in the first one I'm going to do most of like the writing and planning, and then in the second week I'll do most of the shooting.
One of the cool things about Vidjam of Horror is you do get to write like second drafts of your scripts, which I've done the last couple of years. Not The Dentist, because The Dentist had to be like thrown together, but the movie that we were supposed to shoot that was not The Dentist, but we couldn't get like the 5-year-old boy for that we needed, that actually went through 3 drafts, and it's still, I know I can shoot it as a movie elsewhere, but it still is like depressing to me that I really loved that script and we just couldn't find anything for it. No children. So it's tough to find children for movies sometimes.
I have like a whole bit that I talk about where it's actually like super easy to find children. Like they're just running around. Well, you can just pick one up. They're free.
This actually happened when we were shooting Nowhere, PA, like 15 years ago. Wow, that's a depressing statement. My first feature film, we were shooting at a school in Lewistown for like the opening scene, which was like the 2 main characters when they were in grade school meeting each other. And we were told, like, because Alex, who was my producer on that movie, his dad was the vice principal of this like elementary school that we were going to, and we were told that there were going to be tons of kids all over the place. 3 children showed up that were all like his step siblings. And so my mom just like went out in Lewistown with a van and just found kids all over the place, promising them $20 if they would be extras in this movie. And by damn it, it worked. Like she got like 30 kids. to like fill all of these movie things, and they were great. Like a lot of them were thrown in front of the camera and actually gave lines, and I was like, well, Mom, the optics of that might have been a little weird. Like, hey, do you want to get in my van and be in a movie?
That's
Yeah,
a little
sure.
sus, Hal. It's like really sus.
Yeah, my mom does not take no for an answer sometimes.
Oh,
So
good Lord.
yeah.
She's like a professional kidnapper.
Yeah, that was literally what happened here. Like, hey, $20, you want to be in a movie? And all the kids came to the premiere too. It was so funny because like, we had like 30 kids in the back, like watching their scene of the movie, which they're only in the background, and it's only like 2.5 minutes of the entire movie.
But they were probably thrilled.
Yeah, it was great. I thought it was pretty cool that it worked out that way, because there's no bigger oh shit moment than being told you're going to have a lot of kids to fill a scene. This was like the second to last shooting day, so everybody was exhausted. We drove an hour to Lewistown, and I got a text 10 minutes before we got there from Alex being like, hey, just so you know, we don't have as many kids as we thought. Like, fuck. But that's kind of like the thing I like about filmmaking is that it's always creative problem solving for whatever is going on. Like, it gets your brain moving in ways that you just like, do that. And that's partly why I love Vidjam so much, because it's nothing but a mad rush of creative problem solving.
Yeah, I think that it is really challenging as a filmmaker, and I really appreciate Vidjam for what it is, and thank you for so much for getting me involved in my first Vidjam. That's about 2 years ago now, and it was the horror Vidjam.
Yeah, it's good. I was actually out with one of the other board members last night, and we were talking about this, like how sort of the mission of Vidjam changed a lot over the years and evolved. Like, she had started there used to be like 2 different organizations. Like, Vidjam ran the just the contests every year, and then she like started a filmmakers meetup group, which is where a lot of us just got together, would talk about movies, get together on projects and those sort of things, and eventually the 2 kind of merged into each other, and that's what became like the organization. But we were talking about how nice it is that it's grown at this point. Like, at this point I've done 15 of these short movies over, what was it, the last 5 years, and if you think of like, I did a count like 3 years ago for how many short films had been produced through Vidjam, and it was already 100 or over 100. And so like in the last 3 years, it's probably closer to 200 movies have been produced for that now, which I think is awesome. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure like for some of the filmmakers that have been in it from, years before, it's really interesting to see how they've grown as filmmakers.
Oh, yeah.
And like that's what I get the most enjoyment out of, is like seeing the different films over the last couple of years that I've been involved, and like seeing a certain filmmaker and be like, yeah, they're so fucking good, they're getting so much better, and I love it.
Yeah, Lily is actually, I think, one of the best examples of that.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't know if you knew this, but she started making Vidjams when she was probably like 9 years old, maybe 10.
You've told me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were like, they were pretty good. Like, even like, I hate to say for a 9-year-old, but just like they were good movies on their own from the start. And then just around like maybe 2.5 years ago, there was a huge uptick in just like the production quality and everything. And now she's sweeping awards in Vidjam stuff. But there are tons of like filmmakers that have improved. So I've improved so much. Like the first 48-hour film I didn't really know what the process was supposed to be, and it was kind of a disaster. So like, it's nice to be able to look back and see like, hey, I've learned how to do this because of Vidjam or something like that. So yeah, I guess what you and I wanted to talk about for the most part today, 23 minutes ago, was like the concept of exercise and how that makes you feel better. Like,
Yes.
yeah, because
So we're gonna swerve into that one.
you did your Zumba this morning, so you're
Oh my gosh,
you're
yeah.
riding high.
Yeah, well, and so what's really difficult for me is when I exercise, I'm the kind of person who needs like instant gratification. So if I don't see like, if I step on the scale and I don't see my weight going down, I immediately will like give up. I'm like,
Aw.
I don't see any progress. I don't know what I'm doing. So a couple of things have helped me with that. First of all, shout out to Nintendo.
Woo.
I have a Switch, and they have this game. It's called Ring Fit, and you basically use the power of exercise to fight monsters.
What? I think I need to buy this game.
It's fucking amazing, dude. It's like, so, Switch games are expensive on the Surface anyway, but I think the whole thing is like $80 because it comes with like a ring, like a steering wheel looking thing, and you push it in and you pull it out and you wave it around and all sorts of things, and then you have like this strap that goes around your leg for one of the Joy-Cons to go into. And it's really helping itch that scratch for me.
Itch that scratch.
New sticker idea.
That can be our catchphrase for the Depression Vacation Podcast.
Yes.
Itch that scratch.
Yeah. Anyway, so it helps with that instant gratification for me, and it's like an ADHD thing too. In that, like, if I don't see progress, I'm gonna give up, because you earn experience points, you level up. There's like little quests and things, so it really molds and marries the things that make exercise fun with the things that I enjoy. And then I don't even feel like I'm exercising because I'm just like, I need to beat this level or I need to gain experience points. So I'm not even thinking this is exercise. Most of the time, if I'm going to exercise, I have to convince myself that I'm not exercising because it sounds terrible.
Yeah, gamification of exercise, like that worked for me for a long time. Especially like getting the Fitbit was a huge deal. And I am part of Steps challenges every week through the Fitbit. Haven't won them for a while, but like it's still just good to compete in there. And that's kind of how Strava was for me with bike riding for the longest time. I've fallen off of a cliff in just having the available time and mental energy to go bike riding in the last 2 years. But also an interesting thing about me too, because this was a huge like thing with my last girlfriend. I don't actually weigh myself ever because like I used to be in that process, like especially like when I was more super fit and everything. Even just like going through a week where I did everything perfect, sometimes you just gain 2 pounds for no particular reason. And it was depressing for me. And eventually I had a therapist that just suggested, it's like, if you're just keeping up with things, a number on a scale is just that. Like, go by how you feel as opposed to what the actual number was. I think that concept has had both good and bad effects on me because, like, especially as, I've gotten more out of shape, I haven't, like, kept, like, if I was weighing myself every week, I might have been more aware of that. But also, like, it keeps me in a better mind space about just trying to feel good and make fitness and health decisions that feel good.
Yeah, I think that one of the most important things is, and I know that exercise is kind of a love-hate relationship for people who suffer from like depression and anxiety. I know it is for me, where you know that exercise scientifically will make you feel better, or making healthy choices scientifically makes you feel better. When you eat, produce rather than something out of a bag or a can, like it's gonna make you feel better logically. But you also run into that wall of that mental illness kind of pushing back at you and saying it's too hard to do those things, or this is more convenient, or just a laundry list of reasons. And also I think sometimes people get pigeonholed into one metric for health, and so you explained that perfectly, where if you're just basing your entire self-worth and health on the scale, that's not going to help you. And I'm using Noom. Have I told you about this?
I've heard this advertised on NPR like all the time. And actually, my neighbor's wife has mentioned that she was using Noom, and it was helping her quite a bit as well.
It's helping, but the only thing is, so I'm meeting my exercise goals. I'm generally meeting my food goals, but I have been back on Noom for about 2 months now, and I am plateauing. Like, I am not losing any weight. I'm also not gaining any weight, but like that causes me to be like a lot of stress. But at the same time, like if I only base my health progress on the number on the scale, like that's not helpful.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself of that all the time. But Noom, I've enjoyed it. It does talk a lot about psychology and like how to, see health and fitness as like a long-term lifestyle change rather than like a diet or anything like that. And obviously the biggest thing that I remind myself that I learned from Noom is like, you cannot be the best all the time. But you and I just talked before getting on the podcast about how like I have to be the best at everything.
Yeah.
So it's hard because, you want to be a healthy person, but you can get discouraged if you have a bad day. But with long-term change, you have to recognize that, you are going to have a bad day. The slips and surges, that's what they call it in Noom.
Yeah, something that, like when we were talking right before we started recording this, and you were mentioning like you have to be the best at everything, it actually kind of reminds me of So there's a term for this, and it's like results-based thinking versus I forget what the opposite of it is, but one of my best friends, Steve Okawa, shout out Steve, is a pretty like proficient poker player. And he lives in Massachusetts, and he occasionally would always come down, and like he always likes playing poker with my dad, and like he likes my parents a lot too. He's kind of like the second son of the family, and a tall Japanese second son in the Kramer family. But one of the things he mentioned, because my dad loves playing poker, and he does get like very down when he loses a hand. And poker is very much like you can make all the right decisions in that and still lose from somebody being lucky. And he said that my dad was kind of locked into this concept of results-based thinking, where if you didn't win, it was your fault and you should feel bad for it, as opposed to taking away. It's like, no, I made the right decision, and here's what I've learned from this particular thing. Like in the game of poker, for instance, like, oh yeah, this guy gave me a bad beat, but I've just paid a lot of money for the information that he'll play those kind of hands. So like you kind of have to always like take a moral victory from defeat and just like treat it as information. He calls it paying for information. And I've always applied that to like pretty much everything. Like the Vidjam failures, for instance, I refer to those as paying for information. Like, oh, I paid an expensive lesson here for like how to set up and actually shoot a 48-hour film. Failed relationships are kind of the same way. I'm like, This was a very expensive lesson as to how to like actually talk to somebody and like express and be supportive. Or this was a very expensive lesson in learning that I should have stood up for myself more in this particular relationship, or things like that.
Right. And I think that goes even deeper, than the surface words that you're using. Like expensive can not only mean, you spent money on this person and that kind of thing, but you also invested your time.
Oh, that's what I meant.
Right. No, I know. But I'm just saying for the sake of, whoever may in the future may be listening, it's more than just the surface words. It's, when you're right, when you say expensive, it's not just expensive monetarily, it's expensive in other ways too. But thank you for sharing that. That's actually like, I might use that.
Yeah.
So for example, I was talking to my therapist recently, and I'm considering another career change, which I've only been in this position for 3 months. And so I don't tend to job hop. I feel really weird about doing that. But the opportunity that may be available to me will be a little bit closer to my personal career goals. So I was talking to her about it, and I was like, I literally can't sleep because like I'm going back and forth over, do I take the risk, blah, 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 blah. And I said, and even if I do take this opportunity, what have I been doing for the last 3 months? I put all this time and energy into this thing for nothing. And she goes, you paid your bills, right? like you didn't get nothing out of it. Like that was your mode to survive for those months that you were in this other position. I was like, oh, that's a good point.
It's like, do you watch Better Call Saul at all?
No.
There was the very last episode actually deals with this entire concept, like as a whole, as a theme for the episode. It's sort of framed as like Saul is asking a lot of people in flashbacks like what you would do with a time machine, for instance. And there's a flashback scene with his brother, which I know you haven't seen the show, but his brother is like a brilliant attorney who really doesn't like him being a lawyer, like actually actively tries to destroy his legal career because he thinks he's a huckster and he's a disservice to the law, which is right. He's totally right about it. But there's this heartbreaking scene where like they go back to like Saul bringing him groceries like in the early parts of his relationship because he's debilitated. And he says something to him. It's like, if this isn't working out, there's no shame in admitting that you've made the wrong decision and just doing it in about face. And I thought that was a very like interesting thought. It's like, it's never too late to admit that maybe you're not on the right path and just like do a 180 and get out of like just figure things out. Like in this case, Saul had dedicated probably 6 or 7 years of his life to finishing his degree, going through law school and passing the bar, but it still wasn't working out for him because his personality just did not fit being a upstanding lawyer. So like the fact that you might be making another career change in 3 months is like nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Right, I know, but my whole thing is I'm my own worst critic. I judge myself on everything, and what I had to go through too in terms of, so I tend to assign a lot of my self-worth to my career and what I'm doing for work. So I was fired for the first time.
I remember you saying
in June.
this.
And that was heartbreaking for me. Like, I don't think I've ever had a worse breakup in my life. And I really just had to realize that, like, my self-worth wasn't based on that one mistake that I made, but it was really hard to. And, you know, so this job that I'm in right now was me, you know, being in the sense that I had to find a job. And it's not necessarily that it's not a good job. It's just a little farther away from my career path than what other things might be. But that's kind of the same thing in the sense that, like you said, with mistakes, you have to recognize that it's an expensive, what did you say? It's
expensive lesson, yeah.
Expensive lesson.
Or Steve's term was paying for information,
yeah.
which is...
Yeah. So, I mean, I think those are very valuable lessons. It was hard for me to learn this. For me, it feels late in my career, but I'm 26.
You're so young.
I know.
Like, talk
I
to
know.
me when you're 37, like I am. Like.
Yeah, I know. But I was like, I've gone this long without getting fired from a job.
It's funny because I think 26 is like that's probably about where I didn't get fired from when I worked for Relativity, but like. That was the most stable job I had in Hollywood. Like, they gave me a living there for probably about roughly half my time out there. I worked for like 20 shows for them. But also, I was very brash, very emotionally immature in general. And I did a lot of things that I kind of thought were like, better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission kind of things. And actually, the day I was leaving to shoot Pretendagers was the day that, like, my boss told me that I would not be coming back there as an employee, that they were kind of using it as a pretext to just sort of phase me out, which 26-year-old me was furious about this. And also, like you said, it felt like a horrible breakup because I had all these nightmares. I'm like, I had a job where I had money that I could pay for my rent and pay for food and not worry about this all the time. And I fucked it up, which I did. And it actually took, like, a number of years to sort of grow as a person to realize like how much it was my fault what I did there. Like I blamed a lot of other people for specifically that boss who let me go for those things forever. But like in reality, I was a very emotionally immature person, and that was the lesson I eventually learned from that was like, don't be a dick in the I wasn't a dick, but like there were certain things that like stick to the tasks that mean the most and don't like bog yourself down with other things that don't mean anything, will probably get you in trouble, and so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a really great point to make, but I lost it.
It's all good. Like I've actually gotten to the point in my career now where like it's interesting because I don't assign any for the first time. Like I work for the lottery in an undisclosed position. And I really like it. It's a super challenging job. It's very like there's a lot of layers to it, and it's never boring, which is a good thing. But I don't really assign my value to it. Like I do it very well. I know the job well, and I keep learning new things about it. But it kind of is just a means to an end, basically. Like it pays me well. It gives me insurance, and it allows me to like film make, or do stand up or do improv at the same time. So I kind of just derive more of my personality or more of my like identity from doing things as opposed to working, which it took a while to get there, but that's the dream.
Yeah, for me, I don't know if I'll ever get to the point where I completely separate my self-worth from work, because it's just where I've found that I do my best at. And that's just a me personal thing, you know, like everybody's different. And the interesting thing about, you know, my experience is that I had to really struggle first getting into like my young adult life. I went through college and I was working full time the entire time. I was living on my own at 19. By the end of my college career, I was working probably 60, 70-hour weeks on top of my course load.
That's awful.
And I also was like in an abusive relationship during that time too. And so a lot of things were happening at once. But I mean, I always excelled at my career. I worked for Marshalls for 4 years, worked my way up from a part-time position to right before like assistant store manager. Then I took on management at AMC, and then I worked at the bank, and I started, you know, from a entry-level position, made all the way up to assistant branch manager. So in the last 10 years, I've had really exponential career growth. And that's something that has always kind of defined who I am as a person, and that struggle going through it. And on top of what I went through when I was a kid. And like when I was sitting in the interview last week for this other position, they were just like, this is kind of astounding, the experience that you have and like how fast you've moved up in these companies. And I'm just like, it's because that's where I find value. I have no other reason. But I mean, it does give me positive feelings when I'm being recognized at work. But it's also probably pretty toxic.
It can be. Like, I feel this is something I've thought about a lot the last, like, maybe 5 years since I finally, like, stopped working in TV and movies and just went into a career field where it was something I could make a living, is I think there's a really outsized sense of identity placed in, like, your career, especially in this like, I'm sure it's the same in other countries as well. Like, from what I understand, Japan has a really horrible, toxic work culture where there are a lot of suicides among young people now. But, like, in this country, like, it is very much like your identity is based on your job. In fact, I remember I watched an episode, I think it was of Penn and Teller's show, like, years ago, where they were like talking about like why dating was bullshit in general, which was a great episode. But like the first thing that anybody would ask, like they went to these dates and would follow people, oh, so what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? And actually, like, as I'm hanging around Hinge and things like that, that is a question that comes up every time, but it's just not like the first question anymore. So like there is this huge emphasis on what you do for a living, because I think that's like shorthand for, oh, what do you do for the world, essentially? What do you contribute to this great society of ours? And so that's why I always find it heartwarming, like, especially like being around lots of stand-ups, where if somebody puts stand-up comedian as their profession on Facebook, I'm like, yeah, you go get them. That's awesome. That's where you derive your self-worth from. Like, there were also people at the Improv Theater that used to put like improviser at Harrisburg Improv Theater on there. And I always used to sort of roll my eyes at one point, like when I was younger and didn't understand things quite as much, because I was like, that's not a job. But what it is more like where you derive your own self-value from. So, and that's a cool thing about today's like world, is that you can choose where you want to spend the most of your value. That was a weird way of saying that. No,
I honestly, that was a really interesting point that you made. Like, what do you contribute to society? And I never really thought about it that way. But I do know that for me personally, I have always had this kind of obsession with like having, like being in a career that's fulfilling. Mm-hmm. Like I have to be making an impact. And I've always been like that. When I was like in high school, I did activism. I was always going to like protests. Mm-hmm. I was always volunteering. I always am looking for ways to give to others. And sometimes, and I probably do it too much. That's what I'm getting at, is I tend to overdo it. Like, I won't clean my own house, but if my dad needs his house cleaned, I'll spend hours at his house cleaning his house.
Oh my God, you've just described like exactly like this is exactly my relationship with my parents too. Like I've gotten a little bit better at this, but like my house is not completely put together 7 months after I've moved in there. But if they need things, I'll always go over there and help them with like their lawn or things like that. And actually somebody I was seeing over the summer had mentioned a lot of this to me, because she was really trying to like get me to point out like all the people-pleasing tendencies I have and why they're a bad thing, and why because she also is a people pleaser by nature, and like we had a lot of really good talks about exactly this concept, and it ended up with me like sort of like I've sort of reached a compromise with my parents now. It's like, you know, if you can do something on your own, just do it. Like the lawn is a good example. I always would do their lawn for them, but the back of their lawn is pretty flat. So I'm kind of like, if you do the back, I'll do the front where the hills are, since you're like older and can't do it quite as much. But another like sticking point with this person I was dating too was that like my house is not completely put together. Like she would notice things like, you know, you have a washer dryer in your house, in your basement, that hasn't been hooked up yet. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's because I need to like get an electrician over to switch out an outlet so I can actually use it. And she's like, well, why didn't you do that? And I'm kind of like, I guess it's just not something that's important to me. Like putting together my house and keeping it in order. I spend my mental energy doing Vidjam stuff or doing stand-up and improv, and that's always something that I only pull from if I have an abundance of emotional energy. And she was saying quite rightly, it's a sign that like you don't value the right things necessarily, and you don't take care of yourself. I mean, I think I take care of myself okay. I could always be better at it. But like these are all interesting points that you are making, particularly like you'll clean your dad's house, but not your own kind of thing.
Yeah, and I tend to also go through these like I want my house to be clean, right? Because I feel good when my house is not clean. And as like for right now, after this, I'm going to go home and deep clean my house because it is disgusting. And I've gotten to the point where I don't want to be in the house. Like when I start finding excuses not to be home, that's when I know that like I'm in a rut and I need to like light a fire under me. So that's why I figured I'd do it today, since I exercised and I'm feeling a little bit more like I have the emotional bandwidth. But that's what it's all about, is like I have gotten much better at protecting my time and protecting myself. I used to say yes to everything, and I still do in a lot of ways. It's really hard for me to like join an organization or do something like even at work where I'm just a cog in a wheel. Like somehow I always get roped into taking on the lead on something or taking responsibility for something, and then I overwhelm myself, and then I have depression dishes. And it just becomes too much. But I've definitely gotten better at that in the last few years. Like since I started this job, like I don't work on weekends, so I have them free to do things, for myself. I've started using my calendar and my phone more often and actually blocking out specific times that I'm going to be doing things.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, well, like Wednesday nights, my plan is to go to the gym after work. And then Saturday mornings, I'm always supposed to go to Zumba. Like I don't double book myself at 9 a.m. so that I have no reason not to go to Zumba. And I just consider those things to be like set in stone. They can't move. Like I can't do anything but that thing if it's in my calendar.
Yeah, this is what I've been doing more with stand-up actually, because like I have been consistently getting back into it the last 6 or 7 months after taking a long hiatus, and like I block out Thursday nights generally, unless. And there have been some times where I've just been so depressed that I just can't actually go out. Like I just need to go home. But like, for instance, this last Thursday, we didn't have an open mic. So I had like that open time to schedule we had a musical improv practice at my house. And that's where the danger is sometimes is like, I always try to move pegs to make everything fit. And I like the idea of just having blocked out time to do certain things because it makes it feel less formless. And what you were saying too about like cleaning up your house, like I have so many unpacked boxes still in my place, and this week I was just unpacking clothes that I didn't just not unpack from this house, but I never unpacked in my last apartment. Like they just sat in boxes in a couple of closets, completely folded, and I found all these great shirts and things I'd forgotten I ever had, which was cool.
My dad had a similar thing he just moved to a new place, and I was helping him move, and there were like boxes in this old place that had sat in the garage for over 2 years. And I was like, Dad, maybe if we don't need it after 2 years, maybe we don't need it at all.
Yeah.
So but that's something that he and I both struggle with in getting rid of things. And I've been getting a lot better at that too. And like, why am I holding on to this thing? Like, for example, so for the longest time I was holding on to my first guitar. That guitar, like the bridge was pulling up the body of the guitar.
Ew.
And it like I wood glued it. I did everything I could do, but it got to the point where like I showed it to my mentor and I was like, Dave, what's the diagnosis? And he was like, that thing's never going to play again. And I'm like, okay. Well, I was holding on to it and I was like, it doesn't have any functional purpose. I don't have the bandwidth to like put it on my wall or anything like to display it. The only reason why I'm really hanging on to it is because my dad bought it for me for my 16th birthday.
I think there's value to it in that case, like the sentimental value. Like,
right, but I assign sentimental value to everything. So I have to like set boundaries with that kind of thing, because like I'll hold on to a mug for years and years and years, even if I hate it. So I hope that my parents never hear this. They probably will. My dad will. I don't know about my stepmom. But they went to Disneyland. Oh my God, this was like a decade ago now. Without me, and brought me back an Eeyore mug. And it's cute. It's also the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was holding on to it for over a decade because they gave it to me and I couldn't get rid of it. And now I had amassed this huge collection of mugs, and my boyfriend was like, why are we holding on? You've never used this mug. And I'm like, yeah, because it's ugly. And he was like, well, then why don't you get rid of it? I'm like, because they gave it to me. And I finally got rid of it recently. Sorry, parents. But I mean, like, I have to set a boundary. So what we did with the guitar was we cut out a piece of it, like in the back of the guitar, and we destroyed the rest of it. But I'm going to like sand that piece a little bit, have my dad write something sentimental on it, and then use that as like the sentimental piece. It doesn't take up as much space, and like I'm still getting the sentimental value out of it, but not carrying around a whole ass guitar that I'm not even using.
Yeah, that's a creative way to do things like that.
Yeah.
It was like I thought about doing that a while. For like my dad has this flat screen TV in the basement that hasn't worked for a couple of years. But he keeps it like it was not a great flat screen TV, but he won it in a poker tournament as a prize. Like when he was first starting off with poker, when flat screens were not like a huge thing, like it was a huge deal that he won it. And I've been thinking for a while, like maybe just spray painting it gold and making it into a trophy for him, because it's just sitting in the basement, like doing nothing. And so like the idea of taking something that does have sentimental value and then just like trophyizing, if that's a word, is a very cool idea to me.
Yeah, and I think that I've done that with like a lot of different things. Another example of this is I inherited from my grandparents this bedroom set that was built by my great-grandfather. So there's a chest of drawers, there's like a vanity that goes with it, there's another little vanity that goes with it, and then the bed frame. And so it's like a 5-piece set or something, and it was left to me. And so I'd been using this bed frame for, I don't know, 5 years, something like that. That it was built in like 1950.
Oh, wow.
And it was wooden, but apparently no one in my family knows how to measure things. So it was a wooden bed frame, really simple. Wasn't even anything you could take apart. Like we literally had to move the whole thing in as one piece. But there are some slats, and so the slats, go in, and then you put the box spring, and then you put the mattress. Well, the slats were just shy of where they needed to be.
Oh, don't
so
you hate that?
Ryan and I would be doing activities, and then all of a sudden, the whole bed would go and just fall, and then he'd be like, no, keep going, this is so hot. And I'd be like, I can't keep going because the bed needs to be fixed right now, or I won't be able to come. And anyways, so
the exact same thing actually happened to me. Like 2 relationships, it would have been like 5 years ago. There were activities going on, and the slats were not placed properly, and the box spring and bed fell through. We just started laughing. Like there was no finishing or anything like that, because how do you come back from that? But
Ryan really wanted to try.
Oh, good. Hands off to Ryan. Let's embarrass him.
Oh, I love him so much.
Yeah, he's a snack.
He is.
And it's just like that'll be a topic for another episode too. It's just weird things that have happened during sex is always like a funny.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I have so many stories. I'll start writing them down.
Me too. Like,
all right, next episode on Depression Vacation Podcast.
Yeah, I've had some interesting encounters with various people.
Oh yeah.
Like, in fact, that used to be like not necessarily sex stories, but like dating stories in general were how I started stand-up, because there were just so many odd things. Like one of my favorite ones ever is like I went on a date during the pandemic where I thought it was going well. It was clearly a woman who was out of my league attractiveness-wise. She didn't seem that interested, and at the end of our date, she's like, well, thanks, this was weird. And I'm like, why'd you just say this is weird? And she's like, I didn't say that. I'm like, yeah, I think you did. Like, she meant to say this was nice, but just like the Freudian slip was weird. Like, I was weird in some way, which I'm weird in a lot of ways, so I can definitely see that. But yeah, there's a lot of I don't know, just funny stories out there.
Yeah, definitely. And like relationships too, definitely. I would say I'm in the best relationship I've been in ever. I do better every time.
Yeah, that's kind of the way things go. Like, every time you do learn like different things, like the one relationship that I had, in fact, it was the same girl that we fell through in the bed with. Like, that was kind of like the breakup that was on the onus to like actually grow for me. Like, I went to counseling for the first time after that. I kind of just changed my life in a lot of ways. Most of which stuck, some of which regressed a little bit, but like, that was kind of like the breakup that I learned the most from, essentially. Most recent breakup, I've learned a lot too, like specifically more about like people-pleasing tendencies and like when to stick up for yourself, and also like, I don't know, just being more present and being more real, I think would be the best way to put it. But for somebody with people-pleasing tendencies, that's sometimes a hard thing to do. So
yeah, I definitely think that those could be two entirely separate episodes. Like sex and then like relationship in general and like relationship advice. So,
but what we're saying is like it's paying for information essentially with your emotional energy. Like, it was a long 2 years, but you know, here are things you should probably get like not hung up about. Or things like that.
I dated, so as I was saying, like back when I was in college and doing full-time school, I was in a relationship for 3 years. And the guy, like by the end of it, he had been basically living with me for like a year. There was like, it was a year and a half because he pulled a power move and broke up with me. And then 2 weeks later, when I decided like, I'm going to go sleep with other people and not worry about it, then he was like, I made a mistake and I'm sad that you've been seeing other people. And I'm like, okay. And I shouldn't have taken him back, but I did. And he never left after that. Like, he literally was at my house every day, didn't have a job, so wasn't paying rent or anything like that. I was doing everything. I was taking care of him. And then there were some other unsavory things that he did to me that I will not get into. But the major thing, which I thought was really interesting, was I all of a sudden I was like, I want to unalive myself, so I'm going to therapy. So I went to the counseling department at Penn State. I was like, I need help. They were like, yes, you do. And so I went in and started seeing Dr. Backles, my favorite guy. And he, like, after about 6 or 7 months of seeing him, I was like, I think I need to break up with my boyfriend. And he was like, okay, why? And I was like, I don't like the way he treats my cats.
Very solid.
That was the first nail in the coffin. Like, everything he had ever done to me, fuck that. But he was mistreating my cats, and that... So, on the surface, you shouldn't mistreat animals. Hands down. But second of all, we had been talking about, like, getting married and starting a family. I'm like, if you can't control yourself and be patient around cats...
Children.
I mean, like, you're not going to be able to handle children. So that was like... There were other major red flags, but that's when I first started to be like, okay, no, there's a problem here. So my therapist was like, oh, your cats, eh? That's the issue. and what had pissed me off about it was like he had no patience for them, and what he would do is he would like pick them up and like throw them, and I'm like, don't fucking do that.
Don't be cruel to animals. Like, that's a bad sign. I kind of like what you were saying, kind of, I hope this isn't a crass comparison, but like, it kind of feels like what they say about like leukemia or cancer. Like a really good friend of my family's got leukemia and fought it for like 3 years. And then she ended up, they thought she was in the clear. She just turned 60. She was happy and everything. And then she died from a cold. Like, because leukemia had just decimated her immune system, and she successfully like fended off the leukemia, but then she just didn't have the energy to fight off a common cold. And that's what you were saying too, of like, you know, all of these other issues that your boyfriend had like piled up. You successfully fended them off, and then just like the cats came along, you didn't have the emotional energy anymore to just like you're
Yeah.
like, no, fuck this. This is done.
Well, it's another one of those things like, do whatever you want to me, but my babies, no thanks. So I learned a lot.
Yeah. I feel like this conversation could go on a lot longer, but we are reaching the 1 hour
Right.
mark right now.
So we will address this in another episode.
Yeah, I think we just found the topic for next episode or two, even though this was supposed to be the exercise episode.
Oh, we talked about it. It was fine.
Yeah, there were like 5 minutes in there where we talked about exercise. But yeah, so thank you all for coming and listening to the Depression Vacation podcast. I've been Hal.
I've been Shannon.
And this has been fun, like talking about relationships, talking about paying for information, results-based thinking, and
Making healthy choices no matter what's going on.
Yeah. As a quick aside too, I just wanted to say real quick before we run out of time, I'm also starting counseling with like an old counselor this week. Actually the same one I went to after I broke up with the very bad breakup. Because I was going to a counselor for a couple of years, the most recent ex-girlfriend provided, and she was a great lady. I had great talks with her, but I don't feel like I really I don't know, something just didn't click wise, and I don't feel like it was helping me. So going back to the old counselor that over a 2-year period helped me sort through so much shit and was so good. I'm excited to do that because hopefully it'll make me feel better.
That's awesome. Good for you, Hal. I'm excited. Remind me on another episode to talk to you about the importance of knowing when to break up with your therapist.
Yeah, this is a big thing. I have a lot of friends who are therapists, and they say this is very real.
Yeah.
So it's all...
We'll talk about that too.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, and have a great afternoon, evening, night, or wherever you're listening.